Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. Welcome to our second day of conference from Nakba to Genocide, organized by the Hibsani Center for Palestine Studies. Um, we have a couple of speakers this morning, and we are starting off with Alexandra Arsenault from the United States. She is going to make a presentation live online, and now is probably around 9 p.m. over there in the United States, I think. So without further ado, Alexandra, please go ahead and make your presentation.
Hello, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. So hello, everyone. I'm honored to be here today, and thank you very much for having me. My presentation examines how archival destruction, epistemic violence, and scholasticide function within the Zionist colonial project in Palestine. I argue two things. First, that assaults on Palestinian knowledge, universities, archives, intellectual life are not incidental collateral damage, but intrinsic to the formation and maintenance of the colonial state. Second, that practices of knowledge, teaching, archiving, researching, writing, are themselves forms of anti-colonial action. They generate a political horizon that refuses the permanence of the colonial condition. I situate this argument within the context of the destruction of every university in Gaza since October 2023 and insist that it is not an aberration, it is the continuation of a historical pattern. The last remaining university in Gaza, Al-Asra University, was demolished in January 2024. It had been converted into a military base and detention site for roughly 70 days prior to its destruction, and its museum, home to thousands of artifacts, was looted. Al-Asra's vice president, Dr. Ahmed al-Husseina, speaking from displacement, described the destruction as a deliberate attempt to delete Palestinian presence, history, and culture. His articulation reflects a long-standing logic. The erasure of Palestinian cultural and intellectual life is a foundational component of the colonial project. This leads into the framework of scholasticide, coined by Dr. Karma Nabolsi, which refers to the systematic destruction of Palestinian educational life through killing, detaining, and harassing educators, destroying libraries, archives, and universities, and obstructing access to education. While current discussions, such as the work of Scholars Against the War on Palestine, focus on events following October 2023, scholasticide is not an event, but part of a long colonial continuum. It participates in what Patrick Wolfe terms the logic of elimination, the effort to eradicate the indigenous as a people and as a knowledge-bearing society. I first examined specific cases of epistemological violence, tracing back events from the beginning of the Gaza genocide to the 1948 Nakba. I then turned to key Palestinian thinkers, namely Hassan Kanafani, Basil al-Araj, and Wali Daqqa, to illuminate how knowledge production acts as a cultural, political, and revolutionary practice. Epistemology here refers to practices of producing, safeguarding, and transmitting knowledge. The theoretical foundations include Wolff's logic of elimination, Frantz Fanon's understanding of colonial Manichaeanism, and Edward Said's critique of Orientalism, particularly the processes of denial and affirmation through which knowledge is produced or suppressed. The destruction of every university in Gaza since 2023 is the most visible recent expression of a long-standing colonial pattern. The attempt to eradicate Palestinian knowledge has been present since the establishment of the Zionist regime, demonstrating what is at stake. the intent to eliminate not only a people, but also the intellectual, cultural, and historical foundations of Palestinian existence. Conversely, the production and preservation of knowledge hold within them the possibility of transforming the colonial condition. Knowledge becomes a site of refusal, a refusal of erasure, of domination, of the claim that there is no such thing as Palestine. In the first part of my analysis, I trace how the destruction of Palestinian knowledge institutions is not new or confined to Gaza today, but is part of a much longer geography and timeline. The devastation of every university in Gaza echoes earlier colonial attacks. A clear historical precedent is the 1948 Nakba, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced and vast quantities of books, archives, manuscripts, and private libraries were systematically looted or destroyed. Cases further demonstrating this pattern of epistemological violence are the targeting and destruction of the Orient House in Jerusalem in 2001 and the Palestine Research Institute in 1983 Beirut, both of which housed some of Palestine's most important archives. Both were repeatedly raided, bombed, and looted of archival documents. These were spaces that preserved political memory, documented Palestinian life and culture, and sustained a living historiography directly counter to the colonial narrative. When these sites are raided, closed, or destroyed, the intent is consistent: to sever Palestinians from their historical continuity, to eliminate the infrastructures that store collective memory, and to make Palestinian intellectual life appear fragmented, precarious, or non-existent. Taken together, these sites display a continuous colonial strategy. Across time and geography, the elimination of knowledge institutions is deployed as a mechanism to assert control over history, space, and future possibility. Next, I want to draw out the theoretical framework that helps make sense of this colonial strategy. First, Wolff's concept of the logic of elimination clarifies that scholasticide is not incidental, but internal to the structure of Zionist settler colonialism. Eliminating Palestinian knowledge systems is part of how the settler state attempts to secure itself. Destroying the institutions that generate memory, continuity, and political consciousness helps manufacture the conditions under which the settler can claim permanence. Second, Fanon's analysis of Manichaeanism helps us understand the cultural dimension of that elimination. The colonial order constructs Palestinians as the negation of humanity, irrational, backward, violent, and frames Palestinian intellectual life itself as a threat. When Palestinian culture, history, or scholarly work is cast as dangerous, its destruction becomes ideologically justified. Fanon explains how this moral and cultural hierarchy makes the attack on knowledge appear necessary for the settler's sense of order. Together, Wolff and Fanon show that the elimination of knowledge and the dehumanization of Palestinians operate simultaneously. One secures the material erasure of institutions, the other provides the cultural logic that rationalizes that violence. They allow the settler state to construct a narrative in which Palestinian absence is taken as natural, inevitable, or self-inflicted, thereby reinforcing the regime's claim to legitimacy and permanence. This framework helps us see scholasticide not as an attack on infrastructure, but as an attempt to eliminate a people's intellectual capacity, their historical memory, and their future horizon. Now I want to turn to how Palestinians actively negate these structures through intellectual and cultural life. First, insurgent intellectual work, prison writing, study circles, popular education, research collectives, functions as a direct refusal of the colonial logic of elimination. Palestinian literary and scholarly production interrupts the attempts to erase history, memory, and political identity. These practices generate alternative archives, sustain collective knowledge, and assert continuity in the face of destruction. Second, figures such as Basil al-Araj, Walid Daqqa, and Hassan Kanafani embody this intersection of intellectual, creative, and revolutionary practice. Their work demonstrates that knowledge production is not separate from resistance. It's part of the same struggle for life, dignity, and futurity. Whether teaching in underground popular universities, writing from inside prison, or producing literature that shaped global understandings of Palestine, they affirm Palestinian humanity in ways the colonial regime cannot contain or suppress. Finally, following Edward Said, this is fundamentally a struggle between affirmation and denial. Colonial power operates by denying Palestinian presence, denying history, attachment to land, political agency, and humanity. Knowledge practices, from poetry to political theory, insist upon Palestinian identity and existence. They make visible what the colonial regime works to erase, and they keep open the imaginative and political horizon of a future beyond the conditions of colonial domination. Taken together, these forms of intellectual life reveal resistance not only as material or military, but as epistemological. To conclude, I want to return to what the cases and theories together reveal. First, the scale and intentionality of scholasticide make clear that Palestinian intellectual life is understood by the colonial regime as a direct threat. Knowledge undermines the settler state's narrative, so its destruction becomes a strategy of securing the project itself. Second, these intellectual practices are not a substitute for armed struggle, but part of the same anti-colonial horizon. Figures like Al-Araj, Daqqa, and Kanafani insist that study, writing, archiving, and teaching are modes of refusing erasure and are inseparable from broader resistance. Finally, these practices work to affirm Palestinian presence in the face of a regime that depends on denial. They expose the impossibility of the colonial fantasy of a land without a people. Archives, literature, classrooms, even when they must be housed in tents, assert the history, humanity, and futurity of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Very interesting, important paper. I hope you have submitted the paper, full paper, because it's very interesting and we need to document it. Hopefully, in our book, which will publish at the end of the conference later on. Okay, thank you again, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is from Australia. He's Khaled Ghannam, and let's listen to him now.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for giving me this chance to talk about political analysis of Palestinian struggle. Our major slogan is, when Palestine is occupied, it is justified to resist. But how to resist? There is too many ways to resist. I can put them in three major components: PLO, Hamas, Global Solidarity Movement. Still, these three components are not united because there is six structural differences between them, based on their ideology, alliance, idea of coexistence, and Palestinian diaspora, and representing Palestinian people, and PLO reforming. The first one, to talk now in detail about the first structure components, which is the ideology. PLO ideology is national liberal, and their way of struggle is non-violence, resistance, support with political movements to achieve independence by peace process. For Hamas, their ideology based in Islam and Muslim Brotherhood ideology, and they believe that Palestinian people need to be educated in Islam before they start their struggle, and their way of struggle mainly based in armed struggle. For the global solidarity movement, their ideology is socialism, and they believe that if they put pressure in Western country, they can free Palestine as they free South Africa by protesting and campaigning for Palestine inside the Western country. And we can link this one with the idea of coexistence, and this means like the structures of these three components and the way of making decision inside these components are totally different and cannot be similar in any way. So third differences is the alliance. PLO alliance is the Arab governments, mainly Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. For Hamas, it's Islamic network supported by Muslim Brotherhood around the world, and some countries support them like Iran and Qatar. And second degree is Turkey, Malaysia, and Pakistan. For the global solidarity movement, their coalition based in a socialist group around the world and activists and revolutions people in unions and human rights and other form of revolution people in Western country. So when we go for the fourth structural differences, which is the Palestinian diaspora after Oslo Accord, they believe that the right of return is excluded from the agreement, so they formed their way of organization to represent themselves and to achieve the right of return and to get more power and voice inside the Palestinian National Council. And for that, they achieved many things, like building BDS movement and other movement inside the Western country, and their way of fighting, calling for mainly for the right of return for all Palestinian refugees. Now to talk, and this drag us for the fifth structural differences, which is the representing Palestinian people. So we have this issue for long, but there is something about the leadership of Palestine and the movements try to achieve unity or to achieve form of representing the Palestinian people in these three major components, and maybe it's not easy to achieve, but like when we see like Israel is using this divisions between the leadership to say there isn't a Palestinian leadership representing all Palestinian people, so we need to keep occupying Palestine. Last good news for us was in June 2024 in Belgium declaration, where 9 Palestinian fractions, including Hamas, met together and put a plan to reform PLO so Hamas can join PLO. After that, Mr. Abbas announced that like the Palestinian National Council will be elected, not selected by political party, to give more power for the Palestinian National Council as representing the Palestinian people. Followed that by New York Declaration, which major country like UK and France announced that they recognize Palestine as independent states, and they call for peace process to achieve the two-state solution. And this is about the representation. Now, how to reform BLO, it's not something just like talking in soft way, is it achievable or no, but this is what the Palestinian leadership from the three components decide to do, is to sit and let the people choose their representing, including 30% from Palestinian support. Now, for me, I cannot feel like this will happen soon. So, still, for unity, we have some challenges, and to achieve something good for the Palestinian people, we need to understand these challenges, and this challenging based in geographic separation and conflicting align and diverging the strategies. Now, overlapping geography between these three components make a lot of internal fight between Palestinian people. Like if Hamas want to fight, use armed struggle in West Bank, where they start fighting with BLO. Or if BLO try to govern Gaza, Hamas will start fighting them. If Palestinian move from West Bank to Europe and start to do their way to support PLO, they call him to support the solidarity global movement. Otherwise, there will be no people attending their events. And this way, why we need to overlap the geography and stop when someone move from one geography to another, they need to follow the leadership at that in this geography, in the new geography. Conflicts between the alliance, Palestinian people pay a lot of their energy for saying, are you with Iran or with Saudi Arabia? Are you socialist? Are you having Islamic thought or whatever? I believe that this not the way of Palestinian can be achieve any good things in their struggle. The way of their struggle based in unity. So all the ideology need to be respect, and they need to respect Palestinian people and their way of struggle. So we don't want this fight between, are you supporting Iran against Saudi Arabia, or are you supporting socialists against Islam? This is not for Palestinian people to think about. The strategy is: are you planning to make it a socialist country, one-state solution or two-state solution, or are you going to do it by armed struggle or peace process? This strategy is still, it's very, very, very early to talk about it. I believe the three ideology need to keep working, but stop fighting each other and concentrate your fight with Israel. And this is how I believe in the unity. Like, we need to achieve this unity by keep space between these three components and try to understand, use our power to fight Israel, not to fight internally the other two components. And for me, I believe that this can achieve more productive steps for the Palestinian people to win their fight and to achieve something for the Palestinian people. Unity is something people always talk about it. And I can end it with our major slogan: people united, never be defeated. People united, never be defeated. People united, never be defeated. Try to be united. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khaled, for that powerful presentation. We will now proceed to the next presenter, Dr. Muhammad Ali Al-Saggaf from Malaysia. Please proceed.
Hello, I am Mohammad Ali Al-Saggaf, Assistant Professor of English and Linguistics from Xiamen University, Malaysia, and today I'll be presenting to you our paper entitled Exploring Palestinian Cultural Resistance. This research examines how Palestinians have used culture as a tool of survival and resistance from the Nakba to the present. For more than 75 years, a story of resistance has been told, not just through politics, but through poems, art, and dance. In this paper, we looked at how Palestinian culture itself has become a powerful and a form of survival, powerful form of survival. The whole argument is that when people's very identity is threatened, these simple cultural aspects like acts, a song, a story passed down, these can suddenly become something so much more, something deeply political. And so here is how I'm going to break this all down. First, I will define what we even mean by cultural resistance. Then we will trace its roots back to the Nakba and the importance of oral tradition. From there, we'll see how it evolved through art and music, and finally how it operates in the digital age, which all leads to our main idea that culture is, in fact, an act of survival. All right, so first thing first, before we get into all the history and examples, we really have to get a handle on the main concept here. What exactly cultural resistance is? Well, this isn't about a physical fight, it's more of an ideological one. It's about using the stuff of everyday life, your art, your stories, your music, to push back against the official version of the events and hold on to your community's sense of who you are. As this quote might suggest, this is cited from post-colonial theorist Edward Said. This quote actually just nails it. This simple phrase, to write is to resist, really shows how the simple act of creating, of telling your own story, can be a powerful act of defiance. Okay, so let's go back to where we really begin our analysis. We are pointing to the events of the 1948, what's known as the Nakba or catastrophe, as the real catalyst that kicked off this modern era of Palestinian cultural resistance. And to get a sense of a scale here, the displacement of over 700,000 people wasn't just a physical crisis. It's a profound cultural one. It created this urgent need to preserve memory, to hold onto an identity that was suddenly scattered. And this is where the response becomes so important. Well, up against the official narrative, the simple act of families telling their own stories, oral history, becomes one of the very first and most vital forms of resistance. It created this powerful counter-narrative, but it didn't just stop at preserving old memories. Well, things like the poetry of Mahmoud Darwish or the folk songs one would hear in refugee camps, all these started to build something new, a shared national identity for a people who were now fragmented, an identity often built around themes of exile and the right to return. Now let's jump forward a bit and see how this all evolves. From the 1970s onward, we show on our research paper how cultural resistance became a bit more formalized and a bit more assertive. It moved beyond just preservation and into a more organized expression of identity. You can really see this progression laid out in this timeline. It kicks off in the 60s with powerful novels capturing the experience of exile. Then by the 70s, political organizations like the PLO, when they started to institutionalize this and actually funding theater and arts. And by the 90s, you have cultural figures who are now recognized on a global stage. Figures like Darwish, whose work wasn't just beautiful poetry, it was a political act. It gave people a new language to talk about their struggle and made sure the emotional core of their history was passed down to younger generation. And it wasn't just happening in literature. Even very traditional practices were transformed. Take the Dabka dance, for example. What was once a folk dance and dance for weddings and celebrations, was reimagined as this powerful public performance of resilience, of unity, and of connection to the land that couldn't be broken. Okay, so let's bring this into the 21st century. The rise of the internet and social media has completely changed the game, transforming both methods and global reach of cultural resistance. So as you can see, this table gives us a great snapshot of what that looks like today. You've got street art like Banksy's famous pieces turning walls into giant canvases for protest. You have internationally acclaimed film telling Palestinian stories to a worldwide audience. And of course, social media with hashtags becoming these incredible tools of global mobilization. So even a pattern of how this digital activism works usually starts with someone on the ground documenting the event, then it gets shared widely, often with a unifying hashtag, and from there it gets amplified to a global audience, which can then mobilize international awareness and solidarity. For example, the hashtag Save Sheikh Jarrah campaign is pointed in our research as a perfect example of this action. And a huge piece of this digital puzzle is global solidarity. Movements like BTS, which advocates for cultural boycott, it points to high-profile artists lending their voices, and it highlights how Palestinian-run films and literature festivals are creating their own global platforms to make sure their stories are heard. So this brings us back to the core argument. This whole thing isn't just about politics or protest. At its very heart, it's about survival. So now to make this point clear, we introduce a heavy concept. Drawing on the work of various scholars, this point that we are about to introduce here is the idea of cultural genocide, which might sound a little bit new. However, it can be defined as a systematic effort to erase people's identity by destroying their heritage, their art, their language, and even their historical connection to a place. Well, and this brings us right to our ultimate conclusion, where we argue that every single poem, every film, every dance is a direct counterforce to this erasure. And cultural resistance in this view becomes this fundamental declaration that a people's identity, their history, and their story will endure. And so I leave you with this final question. When a culture is under threat, what does it mean to remember? In a conflict where existence itself is contested, the simple act of remembering and making sure others remember with you might just be the most powerful tool of all. With that, we come to conclude our presentation today. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Ali, for that very interesting presentation indeed. Our next presenter is Dr. Hassan AbuHasna. Sorry, Miss Aifa Humaira will be our next presenter. Please proceed. We can't hear her voice. Can you?
Okay, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aifa Humaira Akmalia from Indonesia, and my institution is University of Indonesia. It's an honor for me to be present my paper here and sharing with you, as my title is Learning as Resistance, Narratives of Palestinian Students in Indonesia in the Midst of Occupation. So the background of this study is how education is becoming a resilience for Palestinians, as they have the concept of sumud, or steadfast perseverance resistance. And education is one of survival strategy for Palestinians. The research problem to motivate these studies, because there is limited studies in exploring Palestinian student narrative abroad. There are actually paper and studies about Palestinian students in Palestine. However, about Palestinian students abroad, there is very limited sources. And that's what's made the research problem in this paper. And how do Palestinian students frame education abroad as resistance? And the purpose of this study is to explore the experience of Palestinian students' educational journey in Indonesia specifically, and to examine, identify key motivation and their future aspirations. So the literature review for this study is through 4 key themes. The first one is Indonesia-Palestine relations in education and diplomacy. As you might know that Indonesia from the very beginning is supporting Palestine, because it is the mandate of the first president, because Indonesia independence was supported by Palestine the first time. So we will discuss Indonesia support Palestine through diplomacy, and one of them is education. Second one is about Palestinian sumud and resilience. And the sumud is the determination to withstand adversity while safeguarding cultural and national identity. And as a concept of steadfastness or resistance to occupation throughout the Nakba until today. And the third one is how education becoming resistance for Palestinians, and how they see education a form for national struggle and their survival strategy. The last one is the theory of diaspora identity and post-colonial agency by Bantari. We will discuss about the life of the diaspora in general, or common experiences and so. So the methodology we use in this study is qualitative descriptive design, and we interview 9 Palestinian students that are currently studying in Indonesia universities from different universities and different islands. And we use primary data from in-depth interview, and we use thematic semi-structured interviews. However, we also got secondary data from policy documents, prior studies, and reports. So for the findings, we collected 9 Palestinian students in Indonesia with 7 open-ended questions for every participant. From 9 participants, 66% of them are male and the rest of them are female. And we can see from this pie chart that most of them, 6 of them are from Gaza City, and there are also students from another city like Hebron or Salfit and the West Bank. However, from this pie chart, we can see that Ghannam people are probably the most enthusiastic people to gain education abroad. And actually, for your information, there are 90 Palestinian students currently studying in Indonesia based on the head of Palestinian Student Association in Indonesia. There are 90 Palestinian students in Indonesia right now, and those are the outside number of the students that invited by the Ministry of Defense. So there are the students that specifically invited by Ministry of Defense, and the rest of them are applying by themselves. So probably there are more than 100 or maybe 200 Palestinian students in Indonesia. And for the major they are taking in Indonesia, most of them taking engineering, such as civil engineering, electronical engineering, and geothermal engineering. Some of them also taking medicine, health sciences, medicine, or public health. And the last one is education. And for the degree they are taking in Indonesia, most of them taking master. And the second one is taking PhD, and the last one is bachelor. However, the people that are taking master or PhD in Indonesia is most of them, or some of them, is not the first timer to take degree in Indonesia. People that taking PhD are also taking master or maybe bachelor in Indonesia. So they have been living in Indonesia for more than 5 years for PhD participants. And for master, some of them are first timer in Indonesia, and some of them also continuing from bachelor. From what the interview gained, most people, some of the participants agree that they are wanting to continue education as further as possible, such as PhD, and they want to continue in Indonesia too. So from the 9 students too, 8 of them receive scholarship, either from Indonesian government or from the university scholarship, and one of them is funded by a private fund. So the first question is, how did they first hear about the opportunity to study in Indonesia? How do they gain information? Some of them, most of them agree that they heard from Palestinian government about Indonesia-Palestine collaboration, especially in education, that they saw the information online from the collaboration, especially the KNB scholarship for developing countries collaboration scholarship. Most participants receiving that scholarship, but also they heard opportunity from online browsing, especially for university scholarship. And the last one is information from family and friends.
Miss Aifa, can you proceed faster, please, because you have about 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. So the next one is, what inspired them to choose their major is because the relevance of condition of Palestine, like energy crisis, especially health, and also religious encouragement. And what motivated them to choose Indonesia, because they see education abroad as a form of struggle and as a weapon, because Indonesia is also a Muslim country, so they find similarity in religious value. And they feel level of support, sympathy, and concern from Indonesian people. And that's why they still want to continue life and education as high as possible in Indonesia. The most important one in this is because they see education as their life and their identity, and they see education as moral victory against occupations. In this term is Israel, and they see education as ultimate weapon. So they see education as a form of Palestinian people to people diplomacy. They want to show people that they are strong, they are educated, they are not weak, and they are not beaten by the situation. They want to engage in social activities and spread more about Palestinian life. And that's why the motivation, they want to further continue education abroad. And all of them, they plan to return to Palestine under the condition when the security and political situation improves. But they all agreed to stay in Indonesia after graduate for temporary because the condition is still not conducive in Palestine. So they plan to live in Indonesia until Palestine is ready to receive them. And this research has limitation like small sample size and mostly postgraduate students. And we suggest to future research to have more larger and more diverse samples and examine policy level support systems for conflict affected students. Conclusion, we can see from this study that education is personal advancement for long-term contribution to rebuilding Palestine in student diaspora navigate displacement and envision future roles through studying abroad. And future research should expand participant, compare countries, maybe like Palestinian students in Indonesia and Malaysia, and include longitudinal approaches. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Aifa. Thank you. We will proceed to the next presenter, Mr. Fouz. Mr. Fouz, please, the floor is yours. The Fouz, can you please proceed to present? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear respected chair, for this session. And my topic is National People's Power, Palestine, and the Limits of Ideology. And this is about how the current Sri Lankan government responded to the Palestinian issue for the last 2 years. So I tried to give a brief background and Sri Lanka Palestinian relationship and National People's Power, current party which is in power. Try to give a brief on that. And NPP, National People's Power, Gaza genocide, and critical analysis and conclusion. The background. Historically, Sri Lanka has maintained a pro-Palestinian orientation, consistently supporting initiatives aligned with the Palestine self-determination in both domestic and international fora. This support is situated within a broader paradigm of left-wing internationalism and global South solidarity, reflecting patterns observed in Latin America. At the same time, historical experience shows that successive Sri Lankan governments have sought to cultivate kind of a diplomatic relation with Israel for various strategic and political reasons. And from this vantage point, the study is particularly significant. This study is particularly significant as the current National People's Power government's position on Israel has increasingly drawn critique, especially for its perceived effort to avoid antagonizing Israel while expressing solidarity with Palestine. These critiques are especially salient given the government's leftist credentials, with its principal constituent, People's Liberation Front, historically rooted in Marxist ideology. So this is the irony. The party came to power based on left-wing ideals, but since came to power, they tried to maximum not to avoid antagonize Israel in showing solidarity to the Palestine. So this is my editorial. Interestingly, was published few months before. Interestingly, NPP or JVP politicians were staunch critics of Israel before coming into power, and their prominent leaders have been passionate advocates of the cause of Palestine, going back to decades since the formation of the JVP. JVP is a co-party of NPP coalition, denouncing Israel in the strongest terms while in the opposition, and then extending friendship after assuming power has been a recurrent occurrence in the political spectrum of this land. So my research questions are how the current NPP-led government's approach be understood in terms of translating its ideological commitment, solidarity with Palestine cause into a concrete policy, and what structural, political, and strategic factors shape and constrain its capacity to do so. So, bit of a brief about Israel and Palestine conflict in Sri Lankan politics. And Sri Lanka's relationship with Israel has long been marked by a tension between ideological commitments and pragmatic state interest. From the independence onwards in 1948, anti-colonial sentiment, the influence of socialist and non-aligned movement politics, and sensitivities of local Muslim community shaped a cautious approach to Israel. Yet, Sri Lanka was the first state in South Asia to recognize Israel, with the Prime Minister D.S. Senanayake, whose picture is here, featured here, seeking Israeli expertise in agriculture and land development, even as he criticized the 1947 UN partition plan as unjust to Palestinians. You can see the dilemma. They were critical of the partition, but still they tried to reach out to the Israel for help in terms of agriculture. This pattern of rhetorical distance and practical cooperation continued under the next Prime Minister S.W. Bandaranaike, who amplified Arab-aligned nationalist rhetoric while quietly maintaining relations with Israel, reflecting the early emergence of dual tracks in Sri Lankan foreign policy. But with the Srimavo Bandaranaike deepened Sri Lanka's pro-Palestinian posture, severing ties with Israel in 1975, allowing the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, to establish an office in Colombo. Her approach was driven by socialist internationalism and non-aligned movement solidarity and Indian regional influence, expanding ties with the Arab world, and also the electoral significance of Muslim political actors. Yet, though she supported PLO and asked PLO to establish an office in Colombo, yet she tried to reach out to Israel for in terms of strategic cooperation due to practical needs in trade and logistics. So all prime ministers, they were in terms of rhetorics, narratives, they were strongly pro-Palestinian, but they also tried to maintain a double track, maintain a relationship with Israel at least behind the scene. And but this sharp turn occurred under J.R. Jayawardena's presidency, whose administration openly sought Israeli military and diplomatic support. And amid escalating Tamil militancy, his assertive stance strained relations with Muslim leaders and contributed to call for an independent Muslim political party. President Premdasa, who came after him in 1992, later reversed this shift, severing ties again with Israel, officially citing allegations of Israeli links to LTTE, highlighting how domestic political pressures and national security concerns repeatedly reshaped Sri Lanka's policy towards Israel. And in the post-2000 period, particularly under Mahinda Rajapaksa, saw an institutionalization of ties with Israel. Despite pro-Palestinian rhetoric, Rajapaksa is one of the most strongest supporters of Palestinian cause. But under his presidency, ironically, Israel and Sri Lanka relationship became very strong and institutionalized. Rajapaksa's government pursued high-level engagements, including the first official visits by a Sri Lankan Prime Minister in 2008 and by Head of State in 2014, framing both countries as united by shared experiences of terrorism. At the same time, the regime reaffirmed support for two-state solution and maintained symbolic solidarity with Palestine. So in the post-war era, especially from 2009 onwards, declining Arab pressure amid shifting regional priorities has given Sri Lanka greater strategic flexibility, enabling successive governments to cultivate defense, technological and agricultural cooperation with Israel, while preserving long-standing public support for Palestinian cause. The current policy landscape thus reflects a deliberate balancing act in which ideological commitments, domestic political sensitivities, and pragmatic geopolitical and security interests coexist in an uneasy but durable equilibrium. So Sri Lanka has been always practiced this dual track. This is very interesting. But what is about the current government, NPP? And brief background, NPP created in 2019 as a broad coalition of parties, civil society groups, positions itself as an anti-corruption movement focused on transparency, accountable governance. Although it performed poorly in 2019 and presidential election, its appeal transformed in 2022 economic crisis when the collapse of Rajapaksa administration delegitimized the established political parties. NPP clean governance message amplified by widespread youth disillusionment enabled it to emergence as a credible alternative, culminating in election of its leader, Anur Kumar Dissanayake, as a president in 2024. So,
Dr. Fouz, you have Dr. Fouz, you have 1 minute left. Can you please?
okay.
Please, yeah.
So I try to go trace my argument that current government is a leftist party, but the dilemma is they issued support for Israel. The prime minister strongly given a statement that they support Palestine. They support Palestinian and they call that it is a genocide. And the current transportation minister is the president of Palestine Sri Lanka Solidarity Movement. He is also very strong pro-Palestinian. But if you read the foreign policy statements, they are more pro-Israel. I would say more try to not to antagonize Israel. You see, this is the foreign ministry statement about the Israelis attack on Gaza. Just 5 words. Sri Lanka expresses its concerns over strikes reported in Qatar. This is literally the statement. There is no mention of Israel. There is no mention of Iran. Just blatant statement. And during the genocide, foreign ministry statement is just 10 words. Sri Lanka is deeply concerned and disturbed by the recent serious escalation of violence in Gaza. That's the statement. Who is creating that violence? Who is perpetuating that violence? No state. No, nothing mentioned. So this is how foreign ministry deal the problem. But if in terms of rhetorics of the minister, prime minister, they are more pro-Palestinian. Foreign ministry statement is differently very strategic and diplomatic. Try to not to antagonize Israel. This is the dilemma that current government faces. And I'm also in my paper tracing about IDF tourism. Sri Lanka is one of the very prominent and significant destination of tourists for IDF soldiers, and government did not take any action. Even the many groups have identified many IDF soldiers who have involved in genocide are relaxing and are being came to Sri Lanka as tourists, but Sri Lanka did not even try to arrest or did not even stop issuing visas to them. Rather, they allow them to come into the country and enjoy their vacations. Though this is Eastern Sri Lanka. This is Israeli soldiers who came as a tourist. They actually celebrated the death of their soldiers in Gaza, and this is the posters of just a memory. They stick the stickers of the soldiers who have died. So these celebrations are going on in coastal areas of the Israeli soldiers who came as tourists. But government did not do anything with regard to this, at least to inform that do not bring your conflict to Sri Lanka. They did not do that. But instead of that, what they have done is to arrest pro-Palestinian activists and movements. This is what explains this tension. I have explained few more explanations. In my argument here is why government pro-Palestine, ideologically leftist, they show solidarity with in terms of statements, but when it comes to the idea of tourism, they allow it. When it comes to foreign ministry, they did not criticize Israel. Why this double standard? My explanation is economic vulnerability. Sri Lanka is since just becoming a recovering Sri Lankan economy after collapse in 2022. The government in a vulnerable position not to antagonize any allies of Israel, America, especially Israel. So government afraid that if they take any serious measure against Israeli tourists in Sri Lanka, that might backfire to them. You know, they might, America might antagonistically react, and Israeli lobby might influence. So government is more often afraid to go to this, take a serious measure. So this economic vulnerability is the one shaping the current government's perspective. In that regard, my final point is current government, though they say they campaign that they are more pro-Palestinian government in the history of Sri Lanka, despite their uh, claim as such, but their practice shows they are just they are just practicing what other previous governments are being doing. It is to deliberately balance their strategic interest with Israel and their ideological solidarity with Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for very interesting presentation indeed, which is sadly a common occurrence around the world now. Some countries which have economic problem will succumb to to the pressure to be friendly with Israel. But we don't have time to discuss
Thank
this. We
you.
can, if we have time, we will hopefully we can have some discussion at the end after this last presenter, which is by Dr. Hassan. Dr. Hassan. And then if we have time, we can have some discussion after this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I would like you to imagine a simple but very powerful scene. A young Palestinian student sitting in a classroom in Kuala Lumpur today might be the very same person rebuilding a hospital, leading an institution, or shaping policy in Gaza tomorrow. This presentation is not about statistics. It's about people. It's about potential. It's about the future that must begin now, long before the physical reconstruction of the Gaza starts. This talk builds on our work titled Building Capacity Beyond Borders, Malaysia's role in training and empowering Palestinians for post-genocide reconstructions. I'm here with you today, Dr. Hassan AbuHasna, Associate Professor in Sunway University in Education Technology and AI in Education. Along with me as a co-authors, Dr. Ibrahim Shahab, Postdoctoral Fellow in University Technology Malaysia, and also Dr. Mohammad Al-Aqad, Senior Lecturer in Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, University Malaya. And let me be very direct. While the world is rightly focused on Gaza destruction, the building, the hospitals, the roads, we are overlooking the most critical resource of all, which is human capital. Palestinians living abroad, especially here in Malaysia, from skilled, educated, multilingual, global experienced people who can drive the future reconstruction, yet systematic investment in their development remains very limited. If this generation is not trained, mentored, prepared today, we risk losing not only time, but leadership, expertise, and continuity. Our projects identifies three interconnected pillars that Malaysia is uniquely positioned to support. Number one is academic and vocational excellence. Malaysian University already hosts and hosted hundreds of Palestinian students, but we envision a coordinated system, one that aligns scholarships, vocational program, and higher education pathways to Palestinians' national reconstruction needs. Second, leadership development. Leadership is not formed in crisis. It is formed before crisis. Malaysia can help foster ethical, visionary, resilient leaders who will guide institutions, ministries, health systems, and rebuilding strategies after the war. And finally, health sector capacity. Gaza's health care system has collapsed. We need trauma specialists, surgeons, mental health professionals, public health strategies, and Malaysia's medical institutions can play a central role in producing them. Malaysia already has the infrastructure, experience, and the diversity to become a regional hub for Palestinian human capacity development. This report identifies the key mechanism for that. First, the educational scholarships. Malaysia universities offer globally recognized programs at a fraction of Western costs. Specialized vocational training, fields like engineering, technology, architecture, sustainable development, and digital skills that are essential for the post-war reconstruction. Also, the medical residencies and fellowship. Malaysia can train the next generation of doctors, surgeons, mental health experts they need in Gaza for a long-term recovery. And finally, the incubators, where economic independence starts with business leadership. Malaysia's growing startup ecosystem can nurture the future of Palestinian young people or young generation. Capacity building is not just about technical skills. It's about leadership, networks, vision. And Malaysia offers a lot in regard to that. Knowledge Foundation, for example, as Malaysia has the largest academic and professional training, networks and partnership where Muslim majority institutions with global ties, and also visionary leadership development to exposure to governance, policy, and sustainable development. We are not preparing employees. We are preparing future ministries, hospital directors, university deans, policy architects, and institutions builders. We are talking about the future. Healthcare. When we talk about healthcare, we are talking about the backbone of reconstruction. Trauma and emergency medicine, mental health, psychological support, healthcare administration, system rebuilding. These are not optional specializations. They are lifelines for recovery after the war. And thus, this report proposes a concrete 5-steps plan. First, institutional agreements, long-term formal partnership between Malaysia and Palestinian institutions. And then expanded programs where more scholarships, more vocational tracks, more leadership programs, and also healthcare focus, where the targeted medical training with guaranteed placements. Mentorship networks, Malaysia professors and professionals mentoring Palestinians abroad. And then coordinated return pathways, ensuring trained graduates can return safely and effectively contribute to rebuilding Gaza. This is not charity, it's strategy. It's a nation building before the nation stands again. Finally, empowering Palestinians abroad is not merely humanitarian support. It is an essential investment in Gaza's future. When the borders open, the rebuilding begins. Who will lead it? We need graduates to be prepared today, the leaders we train today, the doctors, the engineers, the teachers, the policymakers that are in classes in Malaysia, classes room today. These individuals will return home with more than expertise. They will return with vision, networks, leadership, and resilience. Finally, to conclude, this report concludes with 4 strategic recommendations. Number 1 is the strengthened partnership, where direct institutional collaboration is. Second, scale educational access with more scholarship, more disciplines, and then prioritize health training, where developing a medical reconstruction pipeline. And finally, coordinate return, prepare graduates to re-enter and lead Palestinian institutions. Let me close with this. Reconstruction does not start after the war. Again, reconstruction starts now, in lecture halls, in training programs, in mentorship circles, in hospitals, in workshops. Every Palestinian trained today is a seed planted for Gaza's tomorrow. Malaysia has the compassion, the capacity, and the moral responsibility to help build a future where Palestinians are not only survivors, but leaders, innovators, healers, and nation builders. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Dr. Hassan, atau Hassan, AbuHasna. We're supposed to have Q&A, but all the presenters have apparently left the holding room, the studio, online studio. So we will not have any Q&A session because of that. So we will take a break now and resume our session at 10:25. In the meantime, we have coffee break now. Thank you. Let's start our session now. Our next presenter is Miss Azra from India. Please go ahead and make your presentation. Ms. Azra, can you please proceed with your presentation? Since Ms. Azra is not ready yet, we will proceed with the next one, which is the recorded presentation by Habiba. Habiba, please play it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to present this article entitled The Geopolitics of Genocide and U.S. Interests at the United Nations, Whose Blood Counts. Okay, so to introduce this article, I'd like to define the genocide according to the 1948 Genocide Convention. The 1948 Genocide Convention defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. And acts of genocide include killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, and deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the group in whole or in part. So, the occupying entities' war crimes committed against the Palestinian people in Gaza meet the criteria under Article 2 of the 1948 UN Genocide Convention. That is, acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. And this is confirmed by the ongoing ICG case, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the September 2025 UN Commission of Inquiry report. However, the occupying entity and the United States reject labeling these war crimes genocide and describe labelings of these war crimes as genocide, as meritless, and propaganda. And this leads us to the problem statement of this article. The year 2025 offered a recent case of how the United States uses the concept of genocide selectively. In April 2025, the US-UN commemorated the Rwandan genocide. In July, it formally accused China of an ongoing genocide against Uyghurs. However, in September, the US UN dismissed a UN Commission finding of genocide in Gaza as categorically false and politically motivated. And this leads us to the research questions. So this article seeks to answer the following questions. How does the US-UN discursively construct the boundaries of the genocide concept? How does the US simultaneously claim universal moral authority and protect strategic allies committing genocide? Now, in this article, I opted for the following methodology. I analyzed 3 statements by US-UN related to 3 cases of genocide, which are Rwanda genocide, Uyghur genocide, and Gaza genocide. I used Fairclough's 3-dimensional model to analyze the 3 statements. Fairclough proposes that any discursive event, whether a speech, a newspaper article, a conversation, a statement, can be analyzed in 3 interconnected dimensions. Dimension 1, that is the text, the discursive event, or the micro-level analysis of the language. Dimension 2, discursive practice, how the text is produced, distributed, and consumed. Pardon. Dimension 3 refers to the social practice, that is, how does the discursive practice shape and is shaped by social structures, power relations, and ideologies. The following table represents the 3 statements. So this article examines 3 official US-UN statements related to 3 cases of genocide through Fairclough's 3-dimensional model. The 3 statements are related to Rwanda genocide, Uyghur genocide, Gaza genocide, and here we have the cases, the date, the genre, the speakers, the word count, and the sources of the statements. Then we come to the findings. The first statement, which was a commemoration of Rwanda genocide by US-UN in 2025, revealed definite and capitalized wording of genocide. The perpetrator was presented as active agent. There was also high deontic modality, and the victims were honored in this statement. The statement served as a commemorative ritual and a selective memory that erases 1994 US inaction during the Rwandan genocide. At the level of social practice, the statement represents a safe and costless moral performance. When it comes to the second the second statement, the text of the second statement, it was a formal accusation of China of the Uyghur genocide in 2025. The text revealed multiple legal nomination occurrences of the term genocide, such as genocide and crimes against humanity, etc. There is direct citation of convention threshold also, such as these acts meet the legal threshold of genocide. China was presented as the sole agent in this statement, stating that the Uyghur genocide was perpetrated by the People's Republic of China. The text also revealed quantification and enumeration of genocidal acts, which served as a coalition-building speech act, mobilizing sanctions and diplomatic isolation of China. The term genocide here was was weaponized to legitimize sanctions and containment policy against China, which is considered as an enemy here. Now, when it comes to the statements related to Gaza genocide, it was a dismissing. It served to dismiss a UN Commission finding of genocide in Gaza. The text, in the text, genocide appears only in reported speech of others and is immediately negated, such as the case of accusations of genocide, allegations of genocide, and these accusations are categorically false, are described as categorically false. The occupying entity in this statement is never the grammatical agent of destructive processes. The only actor is Hamas. The Palestinian suffering is specified through language. The loss of Palestinian civilian life is considered as or described as heartbreaking, but necessary as part of the of self-defense. Now, this statement served as a performative blame shifting. That is, those who say genocide or use the term genocide, the label genocide, to refer to the war crimes committed by the occupying entity in Gaza are considered as propagandists, or they support terrorism. The statement served as a weapon to protect an ally and a client receiving annual military aid. It was also a performance of veto privilege and control over narrative. So 3 statements, 3 different cases, and selective use of the term genocide, and a discursive, if you want, a discursive construction of the genocide. To conclude, the United States does not simply recognize or fail to recognize genocides. It actively constructs the very meaning of genocide through discourse. The US-UN statements analyzed in this article reveal that the label of genocide is transformed into a geopolitical discursive performance. It is weaponized to attack and isolate enemies and to protect allies. And this selective application of the genocide label is a structural feature of American hegemony. The promise of never again means never again for some, but again and again and again for others, as long as the power to decide which atrocities are genocide remains a monopoly of the United States. These are my references, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we proceed to the next presenter, Ms. Azra Shahab from India. Please proceed. Are you with us? Can you please begin your presentation?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Is my voice clearly audible? Okay. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Azra Shahab from India. I'm a recent master's graduate in conflict analysis and peace building. My presentation today will be on the fractured geographies and unified defiance, theorizing Palestinian resistance. This project has been made up throughout 6 months, and it has been delved deeply into the Palestinian resistance and how we can theorize it, how it developed, emerged, and how uh, it started developing. Where can I present? Can you all see my presentation? I'm sharing my screen.
Please
Is
proceed.
my presentation visible?
Yes, yes. Please
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, thank you. The Palestinian struggle against colonial powers, it did not started in 1948 as we see it. It started even before that, when the Britishers came and the Balfour Declaration signed. The ground for the colonization of Palestine was always set even before the 19th, 20th century. So this research will explore that aspect as well. So in the introduction part, the paper gives a historical context that how Israel came into being, and what were the motivations behind the colonization of Palestine, how it came to being, what were the ideas, the ideologies behind it, how Zionist movement started to begin, how it took momentum, then how external powers and global or major powers especially influenced this colonization, how European nationalism, which emerged in 19th century, followed by the anti-Semitism in Europe, basically derived or motivated Zionist project in Palestine. Then we will further explore in this paper the resistance movements in Palestine, how they emerged, they developed, and what are their drawbacks in Palestine, how they are continuously failing, why they are continuously failing. And then finally, this research will also propose future strategies for independence and uh, and suggest some policy suggestions. In this research, several key literature has been sought out. So I have tried to keep the literature very much focused to the Palestinian literature, mainly from the regional perspectives, because a lot of the contribution to the colonization of Palestine has always been made by the Western scholars who have described in their works, in their literatures, in their scholarly works, Palestinian land as a no man's land, which basically make no sense because Palestine was always inhabited by the indigenous peoples. That was always a motivation behind the colonization and behind the colonizing project. So I have tried to sort out the literature of eminent writers from the regional perspective only, mostly. So there is Edward Said. The question of Palestine has been studied to carry out this project. Rashid Khalidi's The 100 Years of War in Palestine, which frames the conflict as a colonial war, has also been sought out for this project. Then to study the resistance in Palestine, I have especially read Yazid Sai to understand the armed struggle in Palestine and examine the link between armed struggle and state building. One of the most important component in the literature has always been Franz Fanon, who is a key scholar in theorizing resistance. He theorized resistance in Algeria and how the violent colonialism necessitates the violent resistance. So that basically justifies the violent resistance in Palestine as well. Now we have found the uh, several gaps in literature to carry out this research. First of all, a detailed analysis of Palestinian resistance and how it evolved even before, like its emergence, even before the Balfour Declaration, has been very underexplored. It's an underexplored topic in most of the mainstream theories. And what are the challenges that are faced by Palestinian resistance in contemporary times is also something which is not very much explored in terms of the internal divisions and factions that these resistance movements face. That is one of the reasons that why the struggle in Palestine is continuously failing. And the ongoing war between Israel and Palestine has opened a lot of avenues for more research and analysis. So the previous literature that happened, extensive literature that happened, that was done by previous scholars, lacked these current developments. So these current developments had also been analyzed in this research, and the central role of Hamas as a resistance group is also been analyzed. There is also a lack of proper understanding as to how global dynamics are shaping this trajectory of outcomes of the movements, because Palestine was colonized at a time when most of the colonial countries were in a process of decolonization period, when they were getting the independence from their colonizers. For example, Algeria got independence in 50s from French colonization, but at the same time Palestine was continuously Israel was occupying the Palestinian lands, and it was getting into the clashes of colonialism. So how it happened, why global dynamics played differently in both the contexts, this has also been researched in this paper. And there is also a very lack of proper study on the changing global political landscape, which has obviously contributed and impacted the effectiveness of resistance strategies in Palestine, because when the same strategies, when the same warfare techniques, mechanisms were used in other countries to gain their independence, it was counted as the freedom movement, and the actors were titled as the freedom fighters. But the same fighters are today are branded as terrorists, or the same movements are branded as terrorist movements. So this has also been changing,
Miss Azra, you have 2 minutes left. Can you please hurry up your pace of presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, sure, sir. So the aims and objectives are very clear for this presentation. I'll move on to the research questions. These are the main research questions that has been guiding this research project. The role of resistance and the international influence in this struggle for freedom, and what are the methods that are used by the Palestinian groups. What are the resistance strategies that have been used by the Palestinian groups for for their struggle for statehood. And then finally the paper analyzes the lessons learned. Uh, the methodologies is very simple. I've used a mixed method approach to carry out this research, combined the historical analysis, also took some comparative case studies from South Africa and Algeria to carry out qualitative data analysis. The first section of this paper basically theorize and uh, carry out a conceptual framework for theories of resistance and liberation. There are various theories that have been discussed by other presenters as well. The cultural resistance, armed struggle, guerrilla warfare, political, civil, cultural, diplomatic resistance. Then there are legal forms of resistance in terms of international law. And this is very important to understand that resistance does not only apply to the context of colonialism. It is fighting against any kind of injustice or oppression is basically resistance. So idea of liberation.
You have to, Miss Azra, can you please conclude your presentation? You have one more minute left.
Okay, sir. I'm just making my final. I'll go to the final lesson conclusions. What this research will find out. So, obviously, we have found out the drawbacks in the resistance movements in Palestine, like the internal divisions between the resistance groups like Fatah and Hamas, and then the resistance in Palestine also needs some strategic realignment. They can utilize diplomatic relation and utilize international forums like UN to to internationalize their conflict, as in Algeria FLN used the same kind of diplomatic efforts to internationalize their conflict. So and also they can reclaim and control the narrative around the Palestinian liberation movement through digital media, social media. These can be used these days. These are the privileges that our generation have, which previous generation didn't necessarily had. So there is a very much need of a unified leadership in Palestine as well to lead this resistance movements. So that is all from my side. Then also I have also analyzed the mass support and transnational solidarity which is there with the Palestinian cause, the obedience movement, student protest, and pro-Palestine solidarity movement. How women and religion is also one of the most important part in these movements, and what is the contemporary challenges, because as I suggested, social media can be a tool here for maximizing the narrative control, but yeah, narrative control can also play negative impact on this movement as well. So that is also a challenge. So that is all from my side. I hope I was able to deliver what I wanted to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry for harassing you, but hopefully you can submit the full paper, and then we can consider for publication later on. Thank you very much. We go to the next presenter, Dr.
Thank you so much.
Shazra Ibrahim and Dr. Rana Hamid from the Maldives. Please proceed, Dr. Shazra.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Should I, may I share the screen, or would you be showing my slides?
Yeah, please share your screen.
Okay. Are you able to see?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today we are presenting our paper, which is the impact of Western media narratives on creating political polarization about Palestine. It's an analysis for the past 77 years. So basically our paper is an analytical paper, and then it does emphasize, and we did highlight all the materials, around 50 materials for the past 77 years. So our contents include first the purpose, the literature review, the methodology, the results, and finally the implications. So here first you have the purpose, and this is an analytical paper. The whole purpose of this paper is to examine the role of Western media in creating this negative Islamophobic rhetorics in order to actually support the occupation in Palestine. And this analyzed for the past 7 decades. And the methodology, this is a secondary research, because data was collected not from primary sources, but from 50 secondary sources, which are in the forms of news articles, reports, and others. And therefore, this is an analytical paper, a qualitative paper. And we did research a lot of news articles, reports, and everything. Then we have the results. Now we analyze the result using thematic analysis, which is a type of analysis in qualitative research where you see different types of themes, similar themes, based on the analysis. So after analyzing the 50 sources, we divided into 4 common themes, which is fabrication of narratives, language, double language, veiling the complicity of Israel, and diminishing of pro-Palestine voices on social media. So what we did was, in our paper, we actually analyzed both the social media as well as from the articles, news articles, reports, and even academic articles as well. Now, the implications of this paper has 2 major implications. One is for the academia, and the second one is actually for the public. The academia, because the October 7th was the date that the world started to know about Palestine, but we Muslims knew about Palestine long time back. So in academia also, there are very less articles compared to the part for Israel. So therefore, this would add to the current body of knowledge. Second implication is for the public. The public would know more credible sources for them to read from. So our paper is based on factuals that has been presented in the forms of papers, reports, news articles. So it's a very factual paper in which the public can read and know about the whole Western media polarization through, Western, media creating this negative polarization by reading our paper. The originality is that there has not been a paper that has been published which highlights about the total 77 years of occupation and how Western media have played a huge role, a major role in creating this polarization. So our paper is novel in that sense as well. And now the literature review, these are the basic items that we items we have actually highlighted. One is weaponizing the term terrorism. Next, Islamophobia. Third, hijacking the term anti-Semitic. Fourth, twisting headlines, words, and news articles. Fourth, shadow banning and censorship, primarily on social media. And the last one is media bias and the politics of language. So in the weaponizing of the term terrorism, by reading many sources, especially even before 9/11, we have actually found out that from this literature indicates that Western media have used the term terrorist specifically for Muslims. Whenever Muslims resist, it's terrorism. And so they have highlighted this in a lot of articles, which we have read even from long ago, news articles and so on. So they have specifically, frequently and often it's a deliberate strategy in which they use to term Muslims as terrorists. The second one is Islamophobia. A lot of times Western media have run this rhetoric for many ages. It's not just 9/11. Even before that, they have started to use this Islamophobic rhetoric, saying that Muslims are violent, that Muslims are chaotic, Muslims are undisciplined. So this Islamophobic and that Islam oppresses women. And so they have used such high titles, and they have used this even way before 9/11. And from the literature we read, we also found out that this is one important aspect, hijacking the term anti-Semitic. Whenever something, they always criminalize people who resist against oppression, colonialism in the Palestine lands by saying they are anti-Semitic. But the reality is that actually the Palestinians are the Semites. So whatever Israel is doing is actually the most anti-Semitic thing in the world, anti-Semitic crimes in the world. But yet they are pretending to be Semites, just like they are pretending that Palestine belongs to them. So in many, the information that we got from all the news sources and all these academic sources, we found out that this term anti-Semitic is often deliberately used by the Western media in order to criminalize people who actually talk about Semitism. Palestinians are the Semites, Israelis are not the Semites, but still they have, stolen this identity just like they did for the Palestinian lands. Then in our literature, we highlighted twisting headlines, words, and news articles. Here, they use very different types of words when they actually refer to Palestinians and when they refer to Israelis. And by analyzing these 50 sources, we found out that there is a deliberate negative politics of language towards Palestinians, and there is a deliberate positive political language towards Israelis. For example, if you look at this slide, these are just of the few terms that we have taken from the news sources that we have analyzed. We have included more in the paper. Now, they refer in a lot of Western...
Shazra, Dr. Shazra, you have 2 minutes left, so you have to hurry up a bit.
Okay. So they have used, for Palestinians, it's a regime. But for, Israel, they use it as, for Palestinians, they use attacks, but for Israel is targets. So things like that they have used. Now, with the thematic analysis, the four themes that we have identified are spreading misinformation by twisting, narratives. Second, double language in double standard in language. Third, veiling the complicity of Israel. And four, diminishing pro-Palestine voices on social media. First, in theme one, there have been spreading misinformation and fabrication about history, just like, they are Semites. Israelis pretending to be Semites. So they have twisted a lot of narratives saying that this is which was promised 3,000 years ago. And then double language, like I said, they have used a deliberate positive language for Israel, while negative language for Palestinians. And third, they have veiled the complicity of Israel. Whenever Israel attacks, they try to diminish the numbers and say it's always Hamas or Palestinians who attacked. And Israel's they try to cover up even the amount of people, the civilians who were affected. And fourth, diminishing pro-Palestine voices on social media. This has been a deliberate action even today, where they would remove followers, they would censor pro-Palestinian voices on social media even now, and they have deleted a lot of even criminal videos of Israelis on social media in order to diminish the pro-Palestine voices. So these are the four themes that we identified from the 50 materials that we read from. So, like I said, this has two implications. One implication is for the academia, and then second one is for the public to know where they can get, information about. So, by reading our paper, they would know for the 77 years how Western media have deliberately used their mediums as vessels for Western propaganda, against Palestinians and against, Palestinians' resistance. So our paper would highlight all these aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shazra. Please make sure that you submit your full paper later on so that we can consider for publication. Thank you again. Sorry for asking you to hurry up because we are running out of time.
Okay. It's okay, yeah.
So thank you. That's the end of the session for presentations, and our next item for the conference is a forum, which everybody is looking forward to. Who the panelists will be Dr. Azzam Tamimi and Helena Cobban. So please, Helena, can you please come forward to the front?
You brought at the library with you.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. When did you arrive?
Wednesday, I think.
Okay, yeah. Welcome everybody to this morning's forum, the title of which is The Future of Palestine Post-Genocide. And we have with us this morning, we are very lucky to have internationally known experts on the Palestine issue. On my right, Dr. Azzam Tamimi, academic and also activist, which I do not need to introduce him, but currently still the chairman of Al-Hiwar TV channel specialized on the Middle East. Two famous books of his, Rashid Ghanouchi, Democrat Within Islamism, as well as Hamas, the Unwritten Chapters. So he is one of probably the few who can say the foremost experts on the issue of Hamas. Tonight we'll be listening to him again, who's going to give a lecture on the future of Hamas post-genocide. But this morning we are going to discuss the issue of Palestine post-genocide. On my left, Helena Cobban, who has spent decades writing and researching about the Middle East, including Palestine. She has her own podcast channel as well, very well known, originally from Britain, but now based in Washington. trying to influence the American government to change its policy, but so far unsuccessfully. But nevertheless, that's what we need to do, right? Now, so let me ask the same question to both panel, and I look forward to your response. When we came up with the topic, we put the post-genocide, naively thinking that the horror in Palestine, in Gaza, should be ending now, since Trump claimed that he successfully stopped it and therefore deserved the Nobel Prize of peace. But what we are witnessing today is hundreds are still being killed. They are still dropping bombs, firing missiles, mass killings continuing. So what is really happening? And Trump is not doing anything about it. So America is not able to do anything about it. The world is not able to do anything about it. So please, can you please help us understand whether this genocide is going to end or not, and why not? Can you please respond and make us help us to understand?
This way, okay? Or
yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure being here with this esteemed community. Now, see, the genocide really did not start on the 7th of October 2023. This has been going on for nearly 100 years now. It's just that it increases in intensity or it decreases depending on various factors. The problem is the Zionist project itself, because Zionists who came and occupied Palestine, their intention right from the beginning has been to remove the indigenous population and establish their own homeland, or their own state or entity, or whatever one may call it. Their problem is that they've not been able to achieve their objective, because the Palestinians have been struggling. They've been resisting. I mean, from the generation of my grandfather through the generation of my father, through to my generation, and I hope also the generation of my children and grandchildren, this resistance will never end until Zionism is no more. So what Trump has been trying to do is actually achieve something for himself, probably also protect Israel from the lunatics who have seized power in it, compared to the more rational Zionists of the older days. And that's why we have today what is called a ceasefire. It's not really a ceasefire, it's a lowering of intensity. And you can see that now the intensity is rising in the West Bank. The killing in the West Bank is a daily occurrence. It's even an hourly occurrence. And the very latest is these two young men who thought if they surrendered themselves, they'd be safe, and nevertheless, they were still killed. Let alone the uprooting of olive trees, the burning of crops, the destruction of property, the confiscation of land, the expansion of settlements. This process has been going on for so many decades. So we should not be deluded by these gimmicks at the international scene. And we need really to focus, especially as we see a major shift in world public opinion. We need to focus on the nature of the Zionist project and the fact that this is a very sinister project that is hostile not only to the Palestinians and the people of the region, but actually to humanity as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Helena, what's your response?
So first of all, thank you, Prof. Nazari and the Hashim Sani Center. It's a great privilege and an honor to be here with this wonderful group of people and my old friend, Dr. Azzam. So we have this thing called a ceasefire, but actually I would call it more like an ease fire.
Ease.
They eased up a little bit. And in the meantime, we have all kind of plans for Gaza, including Jared Kushner has a plan west of the yellow line to create essentially what are very familiar from Americans in Vietnam as strategic hamlets. They want to produce. They want to produce these places from which they remove the people from Gaza City and put them into what they call alternative safe communities, which will be a method of uprooting them from their homeland or their home places there and putting them into tightly controlled, even more tightly controlled concentration camps, where they'll be subject to mind control and brainwashing. And we've seen this from Jared Kushner, and I think they are adopting this more and more. And this kind of a plan of uprooting of the indigenous people and putting them into a place where they are subject to mind control goes back actually to just 11 years after Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, when the Spanish and the Jesuits developed this plan to uproot the indigenes from the Caribbean islands and put them into strategic hamlets as a way to divorce them from their land and their culture, both at the same time. And then there's a straight line from 1502, 1503, through colonial practice, settler colonial practice under the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, the Indonesians, and the French, of the same thing. For example, as I mentioned, in Vietnam, the Americans did it, but prior to them, the French had done it. And the French had done it in Algeria. And the British did it in Kenya. A horrendous record of putting people into strategic hamlets, which they called the pipeline system, that has been revealed by the great American historian Caroline Elkins. Her book, The Legacies of Violence, is about the end of the British Empire, including here, of course, also in Malaysia, where there was horrendous late stage colonial violence. So we can see this as a continuum throughout more than 500 years of Western settler colonial history. And here we are today. Where will it lead? I mean, I guess this is your question, but I tend to agree with Dr. Azzam about the importance of looking back to the origins of Zionism. I've been thinking and writing some recently about what is happening to the UN. And of course, this is a huge issue because was it November the 17th, that the United Nations became subordinated to the US-Israeli plan for Palestine. Something not seen in the United Nations before, except perhaps during the Korean War, when because the Russian ambassador to the UN stepped outside because he was boycotting the Security Council briefly, 1952. And it was a big mistake for him to do that because while he was boycotting the Security Council, the Americans pushed through the idea of subordinating the United Nations to the American war effort in Korea, which thereupon became a United Nations war effort. But that got eased after the end of the Cold War. Now we have the Americans subordinating the UN once again in what I think is a turning point in world history.
So that is going to be my follow-up question to you, to both of you. The UNSC resolution obviously unfair resolution, which is going to perpetuate the colonization of Palestine. We are witnessing now. But unfortunately, as you mentioned just now, unanimously supported by the UN members, including Muslim countries which are in there, of course, and also not vetoed by Russia or China. China came up with some negative comments, but after the vote, during the vote, they abstained, but they didn't use their veto power. But the Muslim countries, Algeria included, supported the resolution. Pakistan was also side there, I think, also supported it. So can you please explain to me why are these countries collaborating in this very unfair? You proceed, and then we will ask Azzam afterward. So you please help understand what's happening in these Muslim countries.
I honestly do not know what's happening in the Muslim countries. I've been concerned more about what's happening in why the Chinese and Russians, who had their own alternative draft, they withdrew it.
Yeah.
So I actually discussed this with my friend Ambassador Chaz Freeman, and he gave what seemed like rational, realist explanation for why China acted as it did. But that was what he gave me 4 reasons, and you can read them where I think on the blog of Just World Educational, which is the organization that I head. But one of them was that the Chinese are not going to be more pro-Palestinian than the Arabs and Muslims as represented on the Security Council.
Okay.
So I think that brings it back to the question of why did Algeria and the Muslims vote the way that they did?
So there is something very interesting. The Chinese, you didn't mention Russia. They are not going to be more Arabic than Arab countries or the Muslim countries. So if the Muslim and Arab countries choose to vote and to support America, so they will be behind that, and therefore pass on the responsibility to these countries. So Dr. Azzam, please help us understand.
Well, I think yes, for the Chinese and the Russians, the Russians have their own problems now. They have their own headache or migraine now. Yes, unfortunately, these Arab governments, actually most Arab and Muslim governments, don't represent their peoples. Whereas the sentiment among the people is so pro-Palestine, pro-resistance, and even pro-Hamas, the official positions are the contrary to this. And that's because there's been an alliance between the Arab governments and Israel. And this alliance, although it existed for some time before the Arab Spring revolutions, it was consolidated by the fear generated by the Arab revolutions that both Israel and the despotic Arab regimes were likely to be the losers as a result of a major transformation in the region or toward democratization. And these Arab regimes, because they don't have the popular legitimacy, and they don't enjoy the support of their masses, they rely on foreign powers, Israel and the United States primarily, for their protection, for their security, and for their economic viability even, although most of them are really failing states. So they don't really care about the Palestinians or about the resistance. And because of the thuggish nature of Trump, every one of these Arab leaders is eager to appease him. So they're competing to be the good guys in the eyes of the current U.S. administration. And I wouldn't be surprised that now that they're enjoying the current lull in the war, they will be rushing to the Abrahamic Accords again. And probably the recent visit by Mohammed bin Salman to Washington had a lot to do with this. Now, regarding the United Nations has always been part of the problem and not the solution. Even its predecessor, the League of Nations, was the one that offered the British the mandate over Palestine, and the mandate was the launching pad for the Zionist project. And now the United Nations, which recognized Israel and which bestowed legitimacy upon it, is nothing but a vehicle. It's a tool in the hands of the victors of the Second World War, led by the United States of America. So I've never had any hope in the United Nations.
Yeah, just to follow up to that, we need to remember not only the original sin of the League of Nations, but the original sin of the United Nations in 1947, because today is November 29th. Mm-hmm. It's exactly 78 years after the passage of Resolution 181, which was the partition plan for Palestine, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, not just the Security Council, but of course the General Assembly was much smaller then, but they adopted it just 3.5 months after India and Pakistan were able to seize their independence from the British Empire. And here's the United Nations coming in and saying, okay, now we're going to take over being the settler colonial administrators in Palestine. The timing is amazing and shocking to me. I mean, I grew up in Britain. I grew up in a different world when I really believed in the United Nations. And now I'm looking at the fact that the United Nations is falling apart. And obviously, Resolution 2803, passed this month, is probably a death knell for the whole idea of the United Nations. So how can the world be organized if the United Nations should fall apart? It can be organized, actually, because many important vehicles of international law are not associated with the United Nations. For example, all the human rights treaties, Genocide Convention, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, these are all conventions that people join. They are parallel to the United Nations. They are not bodies created by the United Nations, including international humanitarian law, which is done through the Geneva Conventions, which predate not just the United Nations, but actually the League of Nations as well. The original Geneva Convention was, I think, passed in 1864. So these things, they survived the disintegration of the League of Nations. They can survive the disintegration of the United Nations, and there are, meantime, a lot of other world organizations or regional organizations that have grown up that can help to sustain international peace. It's not going to be pleasant if and when the United Nations does disintegrate more, but I don't think it's going to be the end of humankind as a whole.
Okay. Later, I hope to include to get some comments from Dr. Mazri and also from Muhammad on these important issues. But we want to give the floor to our panelists first. Now, it seems that we can't really have much hope from the Muslim countries. Indonesia seems to be very enthusiastic, want to participate in Trump's plan, willing to send soldiers to go to Gaza, even though the Palestinians are saying, no, we don't want people to come here. We can run the country ourselves, our country, our land ourselves. But Indonesia says to go out of their way to please Trump. So we can't really have much hope from Muslim countries. But we see people in the West are more sensitive and more aware of the injustice that's happening in Palestine. In Italy, 2 million people turn out for protests. London, hundreds of thousands, and in US too. Are we going to be reliant? Do you think the process of change, including to United Nations, may start from the West rather than from Muslim countries? Is there any hope that things will change because of the people power in the West? You are from London. Maybe you can help share with us the sentiment over there and whether we can rely on that. And later on, you can share with us the American public.
I think what we are seeing is an expression of rage on the part of the young generation, in particular, across the West, against their own world order. Gaza has triggered this. Yes, there is a lot of sympathy with the Palestinians. There is no doubt about it. But I think the Westerners, many of them are discovering that they've been living in a lie. They've been lied to by their governments, which has proven to be hypocritical, not honest about their foreign policy, dealing with corrupt regimes around the world, pampering them, and even supporting them, and allowing the genocide to take place. We don't, I mean, I speak here not as a Londoner, but I speak as a Khalili, as a Palestinian. We are not going to wait for anybody to come and help us. We have to do this ourselves. But definitely, any major change in the world involves several factors. And one of these factors is how the world perceives our cause. Israel could never have existed in the first place and could never have lasted all this time had it not been for the support it received from Britain, France, Germany, and the United States of America, as well as several others. This umbilical cord that is supplying Israel with the source of living is about to be severed. And that's very important. It helps a lot. Not only that, I think any change in the world, especially in the West, will impact also on the Arab situation. The reason the Palestinians have been abandoned and left alone to be massacred by the Zionists is that the Arab world order doesn't belong to the Arabs. And this Arab world order was truly shaken during the Arab Spring revolutions between 2011 and 2013, but it has regained momentum. It has restored itself thanks to the support of the West. So again, any major changes, any major shakeup in the West will be very helpful indeed. And I think what is today horrifying the rulers in 10 Downing Street, in the Elysee, in the White House, and elsewhere, is that when they look at their young students in universities, they can see that in 10 years' time, these are going to be the decision makers. These are going to be the ones who will rewrite constitutions, redraw policies, etc. And it frightens them a lot. And I think this is very similar to what we saw in South Africa, in the global anti-apartheid movement. I remember as a student in the UK in the 70s, when we went to Trafalgar Square, there was always this sit-in front of the South African embassy. And some of the students who were there 20 years later became ministers. I met some of them. And I even reminded one of them when we had a meeting with him that, how come that you were a supporter of the struggle against apartheid and now you are supporting Israel? And he laughed. He said, "Oh, this question is difficult to answer now." But yes, I think we are seeing this change happening. So I definitely welcome what is going on around the world.
Okay. You said that the student later on became politician and then changed his colors. So let's hope the future young generation.
Regarding South Africa, he didn't change.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
But Israel is not, now the world is changing vis-a-vis Zionism.
Okay.
You see, for the first time, people are not for the first time, people are questioning Zionism.
Okay.
And Jewish protesters are saying, not in our name. And people around the world are saying, Gaza has liberated us.
Okay.
These are very significant changes.
Yeah. So yeah, in the US, we see Tucker Carlson and some other personalities, Marjorie Green, Taylor Green, also voicing out very strident anti-Israeli rhetorics now, which is unthinkable maybe a few months ago. So is there hope that things are going to really change in the United States?
There's hope, but I think it's very hard to predict because Trump himself, I don't think he believes in anything apart from himself and enriching his family. So, you know, maybe if MBS comes to visit, he will change this or something else will change. There's this little saying about Trump on the tariffs. It's called taco.
Yeah.
Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
You know, and the Chinese forced him the Chinese just stood their ground and forced him to step back on tariffs. Important things are happening at the world level, but inside the United States, he himself was a product of this thing called MAGA, which is really the representation of primarily the low-income people from the center of the country. The wealth, more or less, is concentrated on the two coasts. And in the middle, it's a very, very large country that the settler colonialists seized, you know, over the last 250, actually 400 years in what we could call Turtle Island, which is what Native American people call it. So Trump is a great showman. He knows how to make jokes that appeal to normal people, including jokes or references that are transgressive and a little bit cruel. When he mocked a reporter who had a problem with his arm, you know, he knows how to get people to join him in mocking, you know, people who are not like them, which is very dangerous. He's an authoritarian, you know, but we don't know, he doesn't stand for anything. So this MAGA base, Make America Great Again, was primarily these low-income people. You have to understand the manufacturing base of the country got completely eradicated over the last, let's say, 30 years.
Yeah.
So people from the center of the country who don't have jobs, who don't have skills, who don't have an economic future, and they blamed in large part people like George Soros and the financiers who live on the East Coast and the West Coast, and they blamed high tech, and they blamed prominent Democrats who represent a lot of that. So they thought, he promised, of course, that he's going to make their lives better because he's going to take on the coastal elites. And he hasn't made their lives better. Not during his first term and not in the first, 11 months, 10 months of his second term. So, and the economic situation of these people at the lower end of the income spectrum is very tough. They are about to receive huge increases, not just the regular increase in cost of living, but increases in the cost of their medical care.
Yeah.
And his tariffs policy has fed this, because tariffs are in essence a tax on imports, and we're very reliant on imports. So the MAGA base is already open to questioning Trump because he promised so much, he's delivered so little. And then prominent people from the MAGA organizing network, like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, are saying, yes, the economic situation is tough, but look how many billions of dollars we're sending to Israel. And it's not primarily about, you know, oh, the human rights abuses, oh, the genocide, oh, it's about two things. It's about the money, and it's about we are not going to have American foot soldiers going onto the ground again, because they were very opposed to, these are people whose families sent young men and young women into the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and many of them, you know, either they got killed or they came back broken physically and mentally. So they don't want the foreign wars, and they don't want the money to go to Israel. So there is a change. For me, it's fascinating to see these people from MAGA fighting each other. That's wonderful, you know, honestly. But also, I mean, as Dr. Azzam said, very significant change in the younger Jewish generations. I'm proud to say that my daughter-in-law is now one of the leaders of Jewish Voice for Peace. Of course, you know, it was not me who married her, it's my son who married her. So I can't take her.
You take credit for even.
But, you know, so this is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of different things going on. It'll all take time. That's the problem. And
but sometimes changes can happen very fast. I was made to understand that some politicians in America now have to declare that they are not receiving APAC money, you know, in order to stand a chance to win. Is that true?
One or two have said that. Yes, Seth Moulton, I think, from Massachusetts, and others are fundraising in like on social media and in ways by saying, I will never take APAC money. And of course, we had the wonderful young man, Zohran Mamdani, who is quite clear and straightforward. Throughout his young life, he's 34 years old, and he's younger than any of my children, for goodness sake. And he's so clear and so smart, and such a good organizer in New York's very diverse communities, including the Orthodox Jewish community.
He's even won over Trump himself.
Trump respects power, and he saw that
this guy,
you know, really did a good job and has some power.
He even praised Hamas.
Okay, so my last question to Dr. Azzam is, what do you want to say to Muslim governments, including this country, this region, for us to make significant contribution to help liberate Palestine? Obviously, things cannot continue as they are, and the policies are not helping. The statements, rhetorics should give way to concrete actions. So please say, what is your advice to Muslim governments and also to the Muslim public?
Well, when the Indonesian president spoke at the United Nations General Assembly, I was really very angry with him, and I even wrote something on the social media. And I said to him, he needed to educate himself about the history of the conflict, because the way he spoke, he wanted to reconcile Muslims and Jews together. And it sounded very stupid and uninformed, because this conflict is not between the Muslims and the Jews. This is a colonial invasion. Many Jews are opposed to it today, and most of the Jews were opposed to Zionism at its inception. And so, I mean, those who are well-intentioned among the Muslim leaders, I would really urge them to read and to learn and to educate themselves about the history of this conflict, so that when they say something or when they do something, they do not contradict the facts of history and the facts of reality as well. But I would also warn them that the world is changing, and it's changing fast. I'm very optimistic, by the way, very, very optimistic. And if they don't themselves change and show some courage in joining the vanguard in the world that is leading this transformation, they will be swept away. One day they will be swept away, because this change is happening. Trump is in power, yes, for a few years. He will be gone. America is having so many problems, and I really believe that the prospect of civil war, as in the movie, I don't know if you saw the movie, but this is becoming a very realistic prospect in America. And therefore, they cannot rely on America being the divine, as they think, power controlling the world. Allah alone controls the world. No, nobody else controls the world. And therefore, those who are quick to appease the White House or any other Western power should try to appease their public. And this takes me to the Muslim publics. I have no doubt in my mind that the overwhelming majority of Muslims as individuals around the world are with Palestine. There's no question about it. But in Muslim majority countries, and in the Arab countries in particular, the masses are in shackles. They are threatened with severe action against them. They could be persecuted, they could be jailed, they could even be killed. Today in the Arab world, a tweet is sufficient to have someone executed, if not tortured to death, etc. But this is not going to remain for good. And I've spoken to some people who, like me, are interested in what's going on in the Arab world. And they all agree that this volcano is about to erupt again. And this time it's going to erupt violently. And it's going to be really massive and destructive. Because these Arab leaders in particular, they have nothing but contempt for their people, and their collaboration, their open collaboration with the Zionists, is making so many people sick and hungry to the extent that this explosion is very, very imminent indeed. I hope some of those who can hear us, I don't know if they hear us at all. I mean, they don't have time to hear someone like me. But if they do hear us, these leaders, they need to know that time is not in their favor, and it would be better. They would be better advised to heed their nations. Look at your people. What your people. I mean, most of the Indonesians, I'm sure they are with Palestine, and yet their president speaks like another Zionist. It's just amazing. Well, but he is not really as bad as the Arab leaders. The Arab leaders are even worse. So this is what I have to say on this issue.
Thank you. Helena, any last words?
I think I have a last word, but not for Arab leaders, because that's not for me. I guess I did just say, in response or as a comment on what Dr. Azzam said about, what the Arab leaders should face, two names, King Farouk and Nouri Said. I mean, both of them were toppled in the aftermath of the Nakba of 1948, and maybe others whose names I forget. But
well, King Abdullah the First was killed.
Well, he was the first. That's true. And so I also want to come to this framing of the West and the rest. Of course, that framing itself is very dismissive of the majority of humanity, who are just known as the Baqi, the rest. They're not the West. But the West has controlled the international system, for the last 300, 400 years, and has controlled the narrative, controlled the institutions, controlled the exploitation of natural resources from throughout the global South. And it's coming to an end. It hasn't, the end did not come with just the national liberation of, Algeria and Kenya, and this country, that country, China, but it's coming now through economic self-empowerment of countries of the global South. I was looking at the demography. The populations of all the countries of West European origin, that is the countries of Europe, of the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, constitutes about 12% of humankind. And amazingly, this is the same percent that the whites in South Africa were of the population of South Africa. So if we were opposed to apartheid in a single state in the Republic of South Africa, I was there in Trafalgar Square also. I guess I didn't see you across the, but
you wouldn't have recognized me.
But, you know, if we're opposed to apartheid in one country in South Africa, then of course we have to be opposed to apartheid at the global level. And, you know, I guess that's.
Though Zionism is worse than apartheid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, but South Africa has got its own story because oppression continues there in South Africa despite the fall of apartheid. There is the economics is my field, which I study the oppression through the rebar system, through the financial system, which sucks away resources and give it to the elites, financial elites. But there's a big topic I don't want to talk about that. It takes another hour. I want to pass on the microphone to Professor No Masaha, our invitee today for the conference, who gave excellent lecture yesterday. No, Professor No, you have any additional comment on the topic?
Some excellent ideas. How to frame our struggle. And it is really essential, actually, how we frame our struggle. So you anti-apartheid struggle, Azzam anti-Zionist struggle, anti-colonial struggle. We talked about it yesterday. I think we as academics are very good at analyzing things and describing things, but not always very good at thinking as activists, thinking about how to change, how to organize locally. And I think you gave us a good example of organizing locally. And we as academics actually started out the boycott campaign in Britain. 2005, we had an academic boycott campaign. And now there's a Palestinian boycott campaign. In fact, we brought Omar Barghouti to London and we said, Omar, you started in Palestine, not just in London. I think the framing is important. Also, I want to add to what Azzam said and what Helena said, rather than actually contradict them, because I think they gave us some excellent ideas about, and I want to make a distinction between sympathy, solidarity, and resistance. I think we have a lot of sympathy in Indonesia, Azzam. We have a lot of sympathy in Jordan. We have a lot of sympathy in Malaysia. But we don't have that solidarity movement sometimes. And we're expecting the Malaysian Prime Minister to do the job for us, but he's worried about Trump. Trump is going to impose tariff on him. Is he not to? And I'm not talking about bin Salman, who is into all the Pakistani leaders who are toadying, kowtowing to Trump. I'm not talking about these people who are so-called kowtowing the president of Malaysia at the UN. I'm talking about ordinary people who are sympathetic to us, but sympathy and solidarity are not the same, my friend, because you can be a Muslim and strongly have a strong sympathy for Palestine, but not having a local solidarity movement. And that what made the solidarity movement in Britain different from the sympathy in Malaysia. The solidarity movement was organized movement through trade unionists, through the campuses. We've been working on it for years and years and years. It didn't come out of the blue. Suddenly we have 500,000 people on each demonstrations. And is that building up of movement locally and organizing this? I think we academics learned from the students more than we taught them in the last 2 years, because it was the students who took out the campuses in America. And I was invited to New York to the University of California. And I think the students actually taught us quite a lot how to do things. So I do want to suggest that sympathy is not necessarily solidarity movement. Most Arab people are on our side. We know what's happening in Jordan. But you said something about oppression and threat and execution. We need solidarity movement based on civil rights movement. Civil rights movement is a political movement. It's organized movement. It's a trade unionist. In Europe, it could be the churches. Some of the churches. It could be. We have so many judges in Britain, so many lawyers actually, who are taking the Zionist lobbies into court, who are organizing, who are defending Palestine Action Group. That existence of civil society, it takes time to do that. and we can do it. I think the PSC, when I came to London in the 80s, the PSC was 5 people, and now it's thousands of people are involved in the Palestine solidarity groups. And it takes an awful lot. It's also a coalition. We have to remember, Mamdani was about a good coalition. It's not just about communicating. It's not about populism. It's about building coalition. And a third of his voters were Jewish, kind of New Yorkers or Brooklyn, if you like. Building that progressive coalition, we need to do that. And the PSC built a solidarity based on coalition. Some Muslim groups, some left-wing groups, some trading, they all came together. This is where we had a mass movement in Britain, and this is where in America went that day. And I think you can learn from what we did in Britain, and you can learn from, to go back to the issue of sympathy and solidarity and resistance. Palestine needs resistance in order for the global solidarity movement to thrive and to grow. It does need the resistance in Palestine, but also the resistance in Palestine. Azzam is also going to need our international solidarity movement. We can't do it on our own. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We Palestinians we've got the split between Hamas and Fatah, which is catastrophic. We know that. It's not good for us. We Palestinians are a small nation, relatively speaking. The Israelis are very strong. Colonization, neo-colonization, settler colonialism, we spent the whole day on it yesterday, describing it as an eliminationist project. Gaza could end up with even shrinker, the smaller Gaza in the way they are planning for it. So I think we Palestinians need that international solidarity movement. The two things work hand in hand. Solidarity needs resistance in Palestine, and Palestinian resistance in order to carry on doing the sacrifices we've been doing for a century. As then we need that solidarity movement. And the last 2 years, that solidarity movement has changed the world.
Okay.
So I think I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I think we need solidarity and resistance at the same time to think both how they influence each other and how we build civil society here in Malaysia, if you like, if you want a lesson from what's happening in other places.
Thank you. Can I have that microphone? Yeah. But in Malaysia, thank you, Prof. Noor, for your comment. Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, even though our protests are not very big, sometimes a few hundred compared to the hundreds and thousands in London, but nevertheless, Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, if you have a shop selling a product from Israel, it will be national news, and the seller will be in trouble, probably jail or a fine. And so we have to are able to maintain a policy of non-normalization. No Israelis are allowed to come to Malaysia with their passport. So that is something which we are very proud of. We want to maintain that, but we want to go further than that, of course. Our movement of trying to focus on asking the Malaysian government to boycott complicit companies, not only Israeli companies, but also complicit companies like Caterpillar, Google, Microsoft. And in that sense, we are very proud to have Dr. Mazli here, who is one of the leader in the leadership of the ruling party. And he has issued a statement recently that the party is adopting the boycott BDS stance in terms of its support for Palestine movement, which is a very powerful statement. Dr. Mazli himself issued a statement condemning the Malaysian banking conglomerate for having a collaboration with Microsoft, because Microsoft is a complicit company in the genocide in Gaza. So can I invite Dr. Mazli to share with us? He's a very experienced guy. He was in NGO, civil society, and then he academician as well. Now a politician, and how his experience of these different fields, how does it shape his own view now for the struggle, how to contribute to the struggle of freedom for Palestine? Dr. Mazli, can you please say something?
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. My mentor would say, there's not much to share about what's happening in Malaysia. I mean, you can read it through the media. Yes, I really, I extremely agree with your demarcation between sympathy solidarity and struggle, how it's connected between the tripartite. But I would like to draw attention to what Dr. Azzam has mentioned earlier on the masses. Yes, there is solidarity, there is sympathy. What will come next is something that we need to coordinate in a more systematic way during the change. Last week I was very happy listening to the statement made by Israeli government, say that they lost the war of social media. I mean, all this time we were blaming the media. I said, oh, media is being controlled by the West. These, that, algorithm being manipulated and whatever. And now they have admitted that though the algorithm, though the social media could be manipulated, it could also be demanipulated. And what's happening now is one of it. The other day I spent very lengthy hours talking to a few friends on the future that we shaped by Gen Z. I mean, my children generation. And to Shahab, your generation. Are you Gen Z?
I'm 30, so.
Oh, you're 30. Also, my children generation. And we were talking about this One Piece revolution that happening in Nepal. The mass uprising in Jakarta, that what lead the Indonesian president towards kowtowing Trump and kowtowing to Israel, honestly. But he lives in delusion. He always thought that, okay, all this thing being inspired by Israel, actually it's not. It's his own mistake. But he needs to resort to a stronger power in order to, make him that. But Gen Z uprising that started in Bangladesh, from Bangladesh, Nepal, in Timor, Leste did not last long. Philippines did not last long. Indonesia, but it gives a sign that they won't stop. And understanding Gen Z, you need another science. I always spend a lot of time talking to my daughter and my son. In understanding, I say that, long time ago, maybe Helena, Sarah, and Azzam is much longer than me. We used to read the newspaper and read the comic strip. We need to wait for a week just to read the continuity of these 3 columns cartoon, and we always live with our crossword puzzles, and we have that patience waiting for the upcoming weeks, for next week's come. Whenever we watch the soap drama on TV to be continued, we can wait for it. But now, then Gen Z, they don't understand that.
You don't want to wait.
You don't. Swipe. They just swipe. They can wait not even for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is too long for them. I'm not sure where will this lead when it comes to struggle of people in Palestine and the global justice struggle. If you say that the real change in this issue, it should start in Tel Aviv. It should start in Tel Aviv. I'm waiting for the Gen Z of Tel Aviv to do something. It couldn't start in Amman. If it started in Amman, nothing will couldn't bring any significance. Yes, it might start in DC, but it's not strong enough. It should start in Tel Aviv, but I don't know how you can do that.
Well, maybe Azzam can give the last comment on that one, because
it's a big thing.
Because over there are still Zionists.
The Israelis, the Zionists,
Yeah.
have lots of disagreements among themselves, but not on issues that are to do with us. When it comes to the Palestinians, there's hardly a disagreement. There are just a few people who, on the basis of their humanity, probably they disagree with what's going on, but they are not they cannot count. They do not count really in the Zionist society. And the massive movement throughout the war was about the hostages rather than about ending the suffering of the Palestinians. So I don't really have much hope in Israeli society changing in our favor. They probably have problems among themselves that will contribute to their weakness somehow. But the Arab masses need to rise. There's no alternative to this. Gaza was being slaughtered every day, while the Egyptians and the Jordanians and everybody else in the region were watching. Not only watching this, they were watching the Emiratis allowing aid to come to Israel rather than to Palestine while the genocide was continuing. It is the Arab masses that bear responsibility, and they need to do something about it. There's no alternative to this.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open this session for, we have run out of time, but let's have a question and answer. Dr. Nizam, you want to say something? Or you please question, and then Dr. Nizam is a businessman. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, firstly, I'm not trying to put more complexity in these already complex issues. But I see that there is this one element that I think, we have this one piece of the US-Palestinian war conflicts. Then we have the problem with the UN, as being said. But I think throughout, especially in the recent time, I think the quite an important issues is the economic and trade angle of this global problems. Especially with this US and China economic war happening, etc. And what I'm seeing also that there is this economic and trade angle that has been used or being pushed into in many this international negotiation, even in the Arab world, in the Middle East, especially now where Trump is going around, signing trade pact all over the world. And I've seen in the Arab world, in the Middle East, and many other countries, even talking to Indonesian. Partially, meaning part of either directly or indirectly, they are talking about the normalization of the Israels, and then putting this Abraham Accord as part of the normalization process. But in the same way, I see that it is also a way, this economic and trade and this trade pact is, in a way, is arm twisting the other countries to follow the US agenda, and also which include their stand and position on Palestine. So if one country is, they're pushing the economic and trade, so you cannot say anything about the boycott, the divestment, on that part. So I see I think more work need to be done on that area, and to look into the angles of trade as a component, because the discourse on BRICS, Russia, China, US economic war is already there. So it can be, on one side, it can be a problem, but in the same way, it can also be an opportunity. The enemy of your enemy is your alliance, maybe, So, and this has a major discourse all over the world. There's also these big people who are talking about economic justice, and they are very receptive about this Palestinian, because I see a lot of my friends. I'm more on the economic angle. I've been talking about this US trade, etc. So I see that this angle, and there's a lot of commonalities of our friends internationally who are struggling and pushing for the economic justice. In the same way, they are much of a supporter to the Palestinian struggle.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the issue here with everything that was said, the thing that was missing was the people of Gaza. I don't think the conversation here included the people of Gaza, which is really a key thing in there. And yesterday with Yusuf's presentation and what we talked about, it was clear that that need for the voice of Gaza and what the people want right now, whether it's Trump plan or whatever it is, I think most of us now are theorizing about a potential kind of solution, but we're not considering the people of Gaza and what they want right now, which is safety, food, support, embracing people, survival more than anything else. So that's what we need. I think if you ask the average person in Gaza right now, they wouldn't worry about the political kind of arrangement. They would worry about survival, because we have just been facing eradication, erasure, and genocide, etc. I feel there's a lot of pressure on Palestinians and on resistance and survival and sumud and all of these things on the Arabs as well, as if it's our responsibility and the Arab responsibility. But do you feel that I think Malaysia or other countries can do more? This is the question in here. Malaysia is doing great with solidarity, but they can still, build hospitals in Gaza. They can sponsor students in Gaza. They can send a lot more food, a lot more aid. They can do a lot more that we're not touching on. And do you think that this is a possibility that Malaysia or other countries, for example, Malaysia hasn't sent a flotilla or anything in there? Of course, it's done great, and we're very grateful for the support. But in terms of practical, actual support for resilience for the people, do you feel that there is more to do in there in terms of practical steps rather than anything else? Thank you.
This is actually the end of our conference. Yeah, already a 2-day conference. So I will have to, it's my duty now to give some concluding remarks to the forum as well as to the conference. We have listened to a lot of papers we were discussed yesterday, a variety of papers. The historical part of it was presented in excellent way by Dr. and we had the arts and from Dr. Ahmad, education, we have all kinds of stuff. So it's difficult for me to summarize everything. But I see my own perception is that the genocide will end. Of course, only Allah knows when, because of the logic of implosion. The strongest supporter of the genocide in Gaza, justice and apartheid in Palestine is the United States. However, the financial system that enabled in the first place is also responsible for weakening the support. As explained by Helena just now, the US is imploding. The debt is unpayable now. It's about 38 trillion and growing all the time. They cannot collect enough tax to pay for to service the debt. So how can that country survive? Bridges are falling down, roads are not being maintained, people are starving and sleeping in the streets in the hundreds of thousands. They can't even pay tax to service that debt. So the US cannot continue even to support itself. How can it support Israel? So that is going to result in the end of the genocide. When it's going to happen, I will know that is going to happen. But what and we should be discussing now, I think the Mohammad mentioned post-Zionist situation. Of course, we have to put more pressure. We are doing this and the freedom of boycott, the divestment movement, calling on the government to be more firm beyond rhetorics. We have to continue to do that. But nevertheless, we don't want Palestine to be like South Africa, where apartheid ends but oppression continues. Oppression actually is violent in Palestine, but its oppression is also happening in the US, where you have hundreds of thousands in the streets and people talking about giving $1 trillion to Elon Musk. And behind the scene, the financiers who are financing Elon Musk are probably quadrillions, but people do not know because they are very skilled at hiding their wealth, right? So they are benefiting from this, but probably they are thinking that the system will collapse if they continue to support the genocide, because the American public are so angry. So I see that there is a plan now to maintain the oppression, the system in Palestine, and abandoning Zionism. America is being forced by the American public to abandon Zionism. It's not happening yet, but it's going to happen soon. But what we need to do now is to make sure that justice will also prevail post-Zionism. But that will be a big topic to be discussed further. We don't have time to discuss that at the moment, but hopefully we'll be discussing that in the future conferences, which Hashim Study Center hopes to continue to organize every year. And hopefully we will contribute to the changes, not only in Palestine, but in the world, throughout the world. Thank you very much to everybody.
Can I just say one thing on a personal basis? I came here partly because I wanted to thank Norma.
Okay.
Not just for the terrific book, but she showed us the way.
Okay.
This is the way to do it. You ask yourself, what can I do personally? I mean, of course, the world needs to change, but Norma changed the world here locally. Yeah. She. So a big thank you for having me here personally. And I was really touched by the way you have really excited me about this project. And I'm hoping to launch it soon also.
Translate it.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And
thank you, the primary founder of the Hashim Study Center, 100% funded by her. Our conference, our food, our transportation, everything is funded by her. So thank you very much, Norma. May Allah. And thank you to Prof. Noor, Helena, Dr. Ahmad, all our invited people came all the way from overseas, over Atlantic and the Pacific to come and join our conference. And thank you to our participants online and also physical who came yesterday and also today to make this conference a success. Hopefully, we will see you again next year, November 28th and 29th. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.